All right. I should start by saying welcome. My name is Nancy Fulton. You probably know me because you're attending my event. And I've been running events since 2015 and on a regular basis. I run several a month. If you want to learn more about my work, you can always visit nancyfultonmeetups.com. I'm going to go ahead and take just a couple of seconds to post the links for Tabitha's book, and also post the link for her upcoming book. So hold on one second and get ready to bookmark them for those of us that are attending in the many ways we might be attending. Let me go ahead and actually also get her website so you can follow her work going forward. It's interesting from a variety of perspectives. Cool. And if at some point in the future you want to get a recording of this workshop, then you're going to be able to find it where you find all of my recordings. You can go to nancyfultonmeetups.com. You can just click the video link. It'll take you to the video library and you can go ahead and sign up there. So I think writing mysteries is really hard, and mostly because I have a very hard time climbing into the head of the killer and staying there for any length of time. Killing people seems like way too much work. I don't know how to get rid of their phones. I don't know what to do with the bodies. It's
Yes.
always a problem.
Rita and we already have our pantyhose ready. We've got the car packed. We're gone. That's it.
Okay, well, I'm okay. I'm clearly just not the best person for the murder thing. So if you should work together, clearly. So I want to start by saying that Tabitha Winters is an interesting guest because she has a second life that really informs her work. She's a practicing licensed mental health counselor with a master's degree in clinical psychology and a PhD in sarcasm, which is, I haven't seen the sarcasm go by, but I bet she can be quite sarcastic should she need to be. She's also a sought after lecturer on the psychology circuit, currently working with her state's mental health litigation division. And before she knew better, she served as a co-leader of the murderers support group, which is exactly as glamorous as it sounds. Tabitha writes under a pen name, and she's released one book and finishing up another soon. You can find Dissonance on Amazon. You have the link in the chat window. And you can also pre-order her second book, Deception, at Amazon.com. And actually, I'm going to go ahead and make sure that you actually do have those links really quickly, just to make absolutely sure, because I have to actually go. Whoop. So here's the link. And I'll just do this again just to make sure. So having made this introduction, I'd like to, Tabitha, do you want to talk a little bit about, first of all, what you do in your day life, and then what you write in the dark hours of the night, and how it seems like such an interesting thing for somebody who's a practicing therapist to choose to write about, and also the folks that you choose to work with seem to be dangerous people. So it's interesting that you've chosen that population from a variety of perspectives, not in your fiction work and also in your real life. Do you want to talk a little bit about how you ended up doing this interesting collection of things?
Sure. Yeah. When I first went to school, my undergrad is in law and psychology, and I ended up getting an internship at our state prisons in the maximum security wings because, unfortunately, I love a dare. So basically, I said, hey, I could probably do that. And my professor said, that's a bad idea. And I said, let's see. So that's how I ended up initially working there, and going into working with the murderer support group and working through a lot of different stuff with them, which is super interesting. They're a very different group of people than you probably are thinking. And then I've also worked in and continue to work in state facilities, different prisons throughout. I have a couple of licensures, so I can work in different states. And then I also work in schools. I obviously lecture, and I work in a private practice too. I get a really cool poo platter of different kinds of people. So On Monday, I might have someone try to stab me, but on Tuesday, maybe we're pretending to be bugs. So it's cool.
So it when we talked originally, one of the things we talked about is the fact that murderers aren't what you expect. And when you're working in the prison system, you have to treat these patients to the extent that they are patients and not just people you're evaluating to see whether or not they're sane enough to stand trial. You have to treat them differently eh,
Yes.
because they are murderers and because they have in the past murdered people, and you don't know if they're going to do it again, and you don't know if you're going to be the one they decide to try to murder next. So can
Sure.
you talk a little bit about how real murderers might surprise us?
Absolutely. So, thanks to your recommendation on the website now, one of the first blogs that's posted is about this. Is the difference in working with actual criminals and working with my make believe criminals. Because in both Dissonance and Deception, the first two books in my spook series, we're dealing with a lot of different types of criminals. And we're going to dramatize that obviously for effect because unfortunately, guys, real prisoners tend not to be so exciting. Being in the prison system can be boring, honestly. So, what you're looking at is a very different set of skills. When I go in, if I'm doing, for an example, a forensic evaluation, I'm going to walk in with all of the information. I've already reviewed the case file, I've looked at the evidence, I've asked for anything additionally, I've met with litigation officials, so I know what we're looking for. So, there's a big difference in I'm going in for a murderer support group. So essentially, these are people who are lifers. They're not getting out. This is more about comforting them in their space, but also making sure we don't make them like too touchy-feely cuddly, because guess what? They're going to get killed behind bars if that's the case. So we have to be really aware of that and aware that they have a specific set of skills and personality traits that they utilize to maintain their own safety behind bars. And that, generally speaking, is not going to fly in the outside world. So when I work in that environment, I'm a very different clinician. I'm very to the point, I'm pretty brash, to be honest. And I'm very clear about how far I can push my subject just because if they go too far, we can obviously be in a lot of danger. Usually, always, this is always in front of guards. We always have appropriate different restraints in place, and that's important. But it doesn't mean when I meet somebody outside for their probation hearing that they can't also become extremely dangerous and violent. And I think it's interesting because one of the things I specialize in is personality disorders. And there are quite a few people who know exactly what to do and what to say to get you in a place where they can get their needs met. And if their needs require them to harm you in some way, that's what's going to happen next.
Wow. So it's interesting you've chosen to work. Do you think in the normal population, what's the percentage of people that have personality disorders, particularly ones that lead to murder, like the malignant triad or malignant tetrad, whatever it is?
It tends to be, it's interesting because first of all, when we collect the data, it's not really that large a percentage of the population. We're usually looking at 10% or less. However, I think media really explodes that. So if you shift those statistics and you say, okay, of the violent crimes, how many had the triad? You're going to get 85%. You know what I mean? Absolutely 100%. But if you just look in the population, you're not going to see it because, to be honest, I've worked with a lot of people who are walking around freely who 100% have these traits, but they're never going to self-report them. So unless you're looking, you're not going to see it. Honestly, Nancy, this is why I don't get invited to dinner parties. Let's start there. Okay. You don't want me at your party because I'll be like, whoa, that dude, check his trunk. What's up?
Yeah. So
You
I'll
know,
just go down to your car right now and just, is there a body? Is there blood? Let's look.
how much duct tape do you need today? It's like, but I'm that person who will, I'm always head on a swivel because I'm so used to being in the prison system and I'm used to being in lockdown facilities. I'm watching everyone, I'm looking for little gestures. Is somebody eyeing somebody else? I'm positioning my body between two people because I can see them starting to ramp up. And I see a lot of extremely successful business people who will come to me because
Mm.
Their EAP, and if you're not sure what that is, that's an employee assistance program. So it goes through your insurance at your work. So their EAP has decided to step in because they did something and somebody reported them and said, you were a naughty person. We don't know why. So they'll come to me with the whole, my work is making me get evaluated. They think I'm a problem, blah, blah, blah. And I go, okay, cool. If you don't know what you're looking for, this guy is going to be clean as a bean. He's going to look amazing on paper. Now, if you're me and you're a pain in the ass like I am, you're going to poke. And I'm going to poke until I get it. And once I get it, I know it's there. And then I have to decide how safe is it to go after it. So generally speaking, I can usually figure it out pretty quickly. It's then my decision, okay, for an example, these are not patients I see in a private setting by myself when no one's in the building. That's not a good plan. You know what I mean? And I'm always really careful about that. But if I'm seeing them, like for an example, if I go to somebody's workplace and I'm doing like one of those fun little facility psychology things where we go through, somebody threw some money at us and they're like, oh, we want to make sure, we want to know why people don't like the Egg McMuffins in the cafeteria. And then you find out there's some weird stuff going on. So you have to decide, okay, how far? And I'll say to the employers, like, hey, there's a lot of bad stuff here. Like, how far do you want this to go? Because we're looking at potential charges if this keeps going. So
Right.
how do you feel about that? Like, how good is your malpractice here? So that's my thing. I'm always watching everything. Even when I get referrals in my private practice, I'm really careful about referrals I take. I'm a weird person. I'll look through the email and be like, ooh.
I'm not in the mood for that guy today. That's way too
Yeah.
much. Like
Like,
this guy seems like he needs to work with a man. Father issues, maybe. Somebody not me is to, or really hated his mother. That's bad. Because I
yeah.
happen to be a woman and I'm probably going to be one during the interview when I'm talking to them. Can you, for people that don't know, can you review I got all used to it being a malignant triad, and then somebody said no, it's a malignant tetrad, whatever. So how many traits? I think a lot of surgeons meet the qualifications of being people that do lack empathy and so forth. And they chop people up all the time, and they're not always easygoing or anything. They tend to be obnoxious, but there's a difference between people that happen to be very dangerous, the kind of folks that may decide to commit murder on more regularly than others, not like when they need to, but because they want to. And can you review what the malignant triad is,
Yeah,
and
so please.
talk about if it is triad or a quadrad or four?
So essentially, it's we've got narcissism, we've got Machiavellianism, and we've got psychopathology. What I will say, speaking to that, is in healthcare, we always say a symptom doesn't make a diagnosis. So any of these things can exist. Lots of people throw around the narcissism thing. They're usually wrong. There's a very specific thing to narcissism. And if you see it, you know what it is. I work with a surgeon. Actually, I've worked with a surgeon in the past who is absolutely 2 steps away from being a serial killer.
Really?
No question. However, he knows that. He's fully aware. He checks all the boxes. I say it to him all the time. I'm like, you're that guy. And I always say, don't ruin my rep. Okay. Don't start killing people. It's going to make me look real bad. Don't do that.
Because I should have reported you, and I'm not doing that because
It's like because he knows how to get exactly close enough to the line without going over. We'll sit there and he'll talk about surgery and he'll say, I'm right there and I have this person's like life in my hands and I make the decision whether they live or die. And so then I'm constantly working on, okay, what are the positives to that? Isn't it great to give people life rather than death? It's like one of those where you're like, let's get the puppets out. Like, how are we going to make this work today? Every now and then I push him back and I'm like, all right, you're right on the border. I'm like, I'm going to have to make a phone call in like a minute. So what are we doing to stop this?
Just
And that
good or bad fantasy. Is it the case that he has fantasies? His fantasies are like in the direction of, wouldn't it be fun? So it's like you're waiting to see if he actually falls over that line. Because some people get tired.
Yeah. So he came to me because of a malpractice suit, which wasn't really malpractice. Like he definitely intended to do what he did. He very luckily had very good malpractice insurance, and he very luckily had an employer who was willing to take the fall for him. But I did let him know, I'm like, everything is in the report now. So if you mess up again, this isn't going to be an oopsie. Like, you're done. You need to accept that. And you're not, I said this to him, like, guy, I like you, but you're not smart enough to get away from with this. Honestly, like, you're not doing a good job of covering your crimes. I'm like, so let's not do that. Let's find a positive way to handle this. And he likes getting just close enough now to the edge. So what we do is basically like an exposure thing, almost like as if it were an OCD tendency. So he has these command hallucinations where he's going to do these things, he's going to do these things. So we have something called it's response exposure therapy, where I work with the person on what's the trigger, what is it you want, and what are we going to do. When we talk about the fact that it's a safe space, you can definitely discuss the fact that you want to create damage or you want to do something bad, because thoughts are not actions. But if you give me too much information and you definitely have a plan, I'm going to report you. And I'm always right up front with everyone right in the beginning. It's if you give me something dangerous, my job in its entirety is to keep people safe. So if you're not going to keep people safe, I'm going to do something about that.
So when you talk about the traits, which one, the one that's confusing to a lot of people is Machiavellian.
Okay. That is, yes, that makes sense, because Machiavellian is always the one that like is, when do you hear that? Let's be fair. Basically, what, think of Machiavelli, right?
Mhm.
It's that manipulation to get what you want, and you're willing to do it no matter what. It's no matter what, you're going to get what you want done. You will make all kinds of agreements with yourself. You will make it okay. This is one of the reasons why lie detector tests don't work. Because if
Really?
you believe that what you did was right, or if you believe you're honestly not to blame, there's no way it's going to find you. Like, you're gonna tiptoe right through that lie detector test. It's not going to matter. So when you have someone who's Machiavellian, you're not just looking at the fact that this person is manipulative, it's that they have no moral compass in regard to the manipulation. I think the youngest person I ever worked with that was 7.
Wow.
And it was really scary. We were meeting because of a death, and he definitely caused it. And as we were talking, he said to me, "You know what I was thinking?" And I'm like, "He's 7, right?" So you're like, oh, "What were you thinking, little 7-year-old?" And I was wondering what you'd smell if you were on fire, if you were burning and I started cutting your skin off. I was curious about that. And I was like, "There's something to be curious about. Thanks for that. Hello, nightmare fuel. I'll see you later." Okay.
We'll be working together for a little while. Yeah.
I was like, "Oh, I would prefer never to speak to you again, but it looks like you're my present now." I'm like, "Oh,
There's no
okay."
child psychologist that's really in line for this activity. Yeah. So is there, so you talk about when you're working with the prisoners, when we last spoke, you talked about when you are working with the prisoners in a prison environment, they are in a very secure environment. They don't have pencils, they don't have pens, they don't have toothpicks, they don't have forks, they don't have anything. And
Right.
but when you're called into an ER,
Mhm.
or when you're called into a situation to evaluate somebody or to
Mhm.
make a decision about whether or not someone is safe to release, they've come into a place and you have to basically evaluate them to determine if they're going to leave that place. Things aren't as controlled. So
Absolutely.
doesn't how does that work for you? Does it make you paranoid?
I feel like I'm always paranoid. To be fair, there's just a certain level of it that's necessary all the time. Chuck E. Cheese terrifies me. There's just too many noises and people. I'm one of those people that I will hug the corners of a room. Like, I'm always looking. They were actually making fun of me. I went to a facility in my area, and they were joking because I just kept grabbing stuff that I thought was weapons. Hey, like, I was looking at, oh, there's a pen. Oh, holy cow, there's a box cutter. Yeah, it's small, but guess what? You're going to get hurt. Like you said, in a prison, we're using prison pencils. These are rubber pencils. They're not going to hurt anybody. I've been at the prison when someone was assaulted who was on my team. So I'm well aware of how dangerous that is. I've seen a lot of assaults in my time. So when I go to the ER, it's funny. I'm fanatic about it. Like my hair is pulled back, no glasses because those are weapons, nothing on me except like a breakable lanyard. Our friend the nurse probably knows exactly what I'm talking about. I'm wearing scrubs. I'm making sure I have nothing you can possibly use to hurt me with. And the problem is, I go into a very busy ER. I don't know how the ERs are where you guys are, but holy cats, they are hopping right now. So when I go in, it's anybody's guess who my person is. And everyone is looking for someone to help them. People are grabbing at me, and I'm trying really hard to just stay calm. But if I get to my person, sometimes that person has not been medicated. Sometimes that person is actively psychotic. Sometimes that person is actively under the influence of a substance. So I'm trying to get some IM meds. I'm trying to get somebody in there. But if it's dangerous, then my next job is let's get everybody away from this person. Let's get them calm if we can. Hey, you look hungry. Let's eat some cookies. Like, I'm all about cookies, y'all. So here's a cookie. You eat that real slow. And then I'm pulling people out of the area, like trying to get, can we get security? Can we do something? Because I'm constantly trying to make sure that's okay. I can't evaluate someone when they're actively under the influence anyway. And they know that, but they're going to call me anyway because they need me on site. So I'm just sitting there looking at my watch going, is this guy sober yet? He can't make any decisions yet, and he's probably really saying some things that are going to get him into a lot of trouble. And I'm making sure none of that's happening. He's upsetting the other people in the ER. It's a whole thing. So I'm with you. It's like we've got to be really aware of our settings.
Mhm.
It's funny, like my family makes fun of me because I'll be the first one who'll be like, didn't you notice that? Didn't you see that? And they're like, no, we didn't notice that. And I'm like, yeah, I noticed that was moved slightly to the left.
And
You
I'm
know?
very upset by that now. I don't know why that happened. This is upsetting now. So can you tell me, somebody asked, and I think it's a great question, is what creates people that have the malignant triad, or the people that become murderers? Is it something that's done to them as a rule, or is it something that they're born with, or is it a combination of two factors that meet together?
You know what? That's a great question, honestly. So it's interesting because I work with people who have all of the makings of a murderer. And they've got the background, we've got lack of empathy, we've got lack of nurturing, we've got ongoing abuse, we've got a situation where they were not rewarded for positive things, and they make a choice not to. And that's the whole thing. And I remind my patients a lot of that, especially when they're on the line and they're like, I'm scared because my whole family does this and I don't want to do it. It does come down to personal choice. And it comes down to what is your feeling and what is your motivation to not engage in this behavior. Because I say to them, we all have terrible thoughts. You've read my books. I got some pretty bad thoughts, right?
Yeah.
So
You do some good murders. I noticed that.
thanks. But it's but we don't do these things. And what I find is it takes one person. And this is why if anybody is any of you who work in healthcare, anybody who works in education, anybody who has an interaction with a person, right? If you can give that person something good, it takes one person to stop you from going down that path. That's it. I've seen families where it's mom was awful, dad was awful, step parents were awful, brother and sister were awful. And there's like an English teacher who took an interest and made them think they were important and taught them a positive way to gain attention. Once that becomes something that's positive and there's a buy-in, they're more likely to do it. The same is true adversely. So, like for an example, it's an innocuous example, but somebody brought me some kid that was like 15 with
Mhm.
selective mutism. He is the kid who doesn't talk. How cool is that? I cannot sell that kid anything more exciting than being the kid who doesn't talk and never has to talk to an adult. That kid's a rock star. I said to the parents, I'm like, I got nothing.
Mhm.
There's nothing I can do because he's created a system of people who will all meet his needs. He has a group of friends who will get his stuff done. He has teachers who understand the signals he gives. Kid can totally talk, by the way,
Mhm.
but he's figured out how to do it. So it comes down to, can you get a buy-in that's better than the one that you have?
Mhm.
Because I work with tons of people who are borderline personality disordered. I honestly, I'm not gonna lie, I won't see more than two at a time because they are so difficult. They're
Yeah.
very hard to work with. So when I work with them, I'm trying to explain to them why they shouldn't behave like this. And they're looking at me going, but I get what I want.
Yeah, this
Why
works
would
every
I
time.
stop?
Right. If I tell the right lies, I really only get in trouble, and then I just change people, and I can do it to a whole new group of people, so
Absolutely.
I don't get caught. So what's
Oh,
your
100%. Yeah, there's no buy-in. But I'd said to one woman, she we were really working hard, and then all of a sudden we get a call from the cops because she sent a letter saying she was going to chop him up and put him in little freezer bags. And I'm like, honey, like,
Mhm.
talked about this. What are we doing? And I got angry. And this made me feel better. This made me feel powerful. This made me feel like I could do something that would stop all of the pain this person caused me. And I want them to hurt. And it just all fell apart. It was like, okay, we got to start right from the bottom all over again once you get out of prison, because now you violated your probation.
Mhm.
So
That
it's hard. It's hard to get that buy-in. And but it doesn't have to be that extreme, guys. It can be something much more simple, like a parent who's in a very bad toxic relationship and doesn't know how to engage with their children aside from being extremely aggressive because that's what they know. I always say to people, we have our own tool belts. You have the tools you have. So my job is to help you to get the tools to work better.
Mhm. God bless you, because it sounds like really hard work, I gotta tell you. If the when so when you think you had a lot to draw on when you were creating your own murders and when you were creating your own murderers, and you've got a series going, and your objective, one of the things that I found interesting is we had a brief chat talking about disassociation, and I told you how much I like it, and I said
Yeah.
people always say it's very bad when you disassociate, and it's no, I actually really like that feeling of just you're in a really traumatic situation, it is totally horrible, and then your brain just goes, I'm just gonna be about 4 feet above your head, and we're just gonna get through this thing. Oh, it's like you're watching a movie, and you can be very functional in that state of mind. You can really get a lot done. When you come back to yourself, it's a bit of a problem. And you mentioned the fact that one of the things that you were doing with your work is trying to help people see how certain things feel, not just disassociation, but
Yeah, it's actually interesting because the first book, Dissonance, the reason it's named Dissonance is a cognitive disorder where essentially your actions don't meet what you're saying. And that happens a lot in depersonalization. I work a lot with depersonalization because I work a lot with trauma, PTSD. So you're right. That's exactly what your brain does. Your brain is trained to keep you safe. That's its job, is to survive. So if it goes bloop and leaves you, it's doing it for a reason. So my job is to figure out why your brain is doing it and to understand that it's a reflexive action. So
Mhm.
I need to figure out how to make it better. So for an example, the reason that this book, honestly, Dissonance was written was the people in my town had the flu. So nobody came to session and I couldn't get into the prisons and I couldn't get into the hospitals because everybody had COVID. So wop wop. Um, okay. So what happened was I was thinking a lot about one of my younger patients who said, it's not fair that nobody understands what dissociation is. I'm not crazy. And I said, you're not crazy. I said, I can't treat crazy. Like you can't. It's not a thing. I said, so let me help you. And we talked about the symptoms and everything. And I said, it would be really cool if we had a book that actually helped with this so you could see it. So the first thing that I wrote actually was a scene with that about what it sounds like, what it feels like, what your body does, and what it feels like when you come back. And
Mhm,
that weird feeling of going back into your body
mhm,
and trying to be like, okay, it's this time and I'm here. And
right.
these last three things happened. Like I'm a person again. Like,
Mhm,
okay, it's very unsettling. And if you
mhm,
don't know that's a normal part of trauma, you think you're losing your mind.
yes.
It's terrifying.
Mhm,
So that's how Dissonance got written. And it just became something more and more. And then Deception, which is out now, yay, go team. keeps building on that because our protagonist, Ellie, has a ton of trauma in her background. So her brain just does this now. And it's really hard for her to control it because once it's reflexive, depending on your state of anxiety, it could be a car making a noise, it could be a balloon popping. It
Mm-hmm.
could honestly be as simple as the power goes out and you don't know how to reset your clock. And just the sense of frustration and not having control is enough to shoot your anxiety up enough that it shifts that dissociation. And before you know it, it's like, how much time has gone by? And you're like looking at it. And you're right. People walk, they talk, they do things. I've been in session with people where they are gone.
Mm-hmm.
They're just gone. I'm like, okay. And they'll say stuff, they'll interact with things that aren't there. They're not having a psychotic episode. That's quite different.
Mm-hmm.
This is them going into a blank, a void. And if you've never had it, good for you, go team. But if you don't know what it feels like, if you've ever been driving down the highway and all of a sudden you're like, oh, it's my exit. What have I been doing for the last 20 minutes? I might have killed 20 people.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it is. It's called a fugue state. So that happens to us when our brain knows what it's doing enough that it just quiets itself and it does all the stuff it needs to do to be alive. But it's not taking in any stimuli and it's not creating memory because it's busy healing and doing the stuff it's supposed to do. So you
Mm-hmm.
just have like these patches of time, they're just unaccounted for. And in the book, obviously, I dramatize that to make it a lot more sinister, but it does happen quite a bit. And if you have it and you don't know why it's happening, generally speaking, there's trauma. So it's a good idea to find someone who specializes in trauma to walk you through it and not expose you to it too quickly, because then you can be re-traumatized and that can be worse.
Is it the case that when you're working with murderers and other violent criminals that they've had, in many cases, histories of trauma that actually trigger them to move into these kinds of states of mind where, like, they used to talk about a blind rage?
Yeah. Mm. Yes. So that blind rage is interesting. So generally speaking, what we're looking at is somebody gets into a place where legitimately think of your brain like a fuse box.
Mm-hmm.
So when we have a panic attack, a seizure, or blind rage, it's basically the same three things that are happening. Okay. So what's going on is there's too much energy going to your fuse box, your brain, and it pops. When it pops, a couple of things can happen. You can have a panic attack and pass out. You can have a seizure if those are the chemicals that are involved, or you can have blind rage. And I've worked with several cases of blind rage. And typically it's really awful because the person does go into fugue and they may or may not be aware of what's happening. Usually they're reenacting something that's so dangerous and scary that they're protecting themselves. So they are attacking whatever is in the area because it is of the utmost importance that they stay alive.
Mm-hmm.
And I have seen several people killed in like one sitting because of this, because somebody just went off. And generally speaking, there's a lot of trauma behind it. It's somebody who's probably been fighting for their life for most of their life. And the people they attack usually aren't even, let's say, the target. It's the people that were nearby when they went off. There might be a target, but like anybody in the surroundings, they're going to get hurt. And I also work with people in lots of healthcare environments where we're worried about those kinds of things. So I do seminars where we talk about like how do you talk somebody down? How do you know when someone's in that space? How do you get away from them? And just understanding how to not confront them if you're not trained in it and how to keep yourself safe because a lot of people will misunderstand and try to get near them to calm them down and they immediately are going to become extremely aggressive. I say to people like keep that distance because the closer you get to them, the more dangerous you are. The
Mm-hmm.
farther away you are, the blurrier you are. So you're better off that way.
Mm-hmm.
Keep away, get people in there who can actually handle it.
That's amazing. So the when you're creating your works, your research and the training that you've had and your practical experience are working their way into your creative endeavors. Do you think it's cathartic to you in order to create these stories, to be on the side where it's actually you get to actually murder people instead of trying to make people not murder people all the time?
You know what's funny is the part that I love the most is looking at the trauma of the characters and allowing them to be loved despite the fact they're really flawed and they're really hurt, and allowing them to still put themselves on the line to help other people despite the fact that life may be threw them for a curve. And when I'm working with my murderers, I love a multifaceted murderer. I love somebody who's got a lot going on. And generally speaking, someone who is committing a crime in a way where they are fully aware of what they're doing is somebody who also has this acceptance that what they're doing is right. So that's usually where I come from in my space. Of a lot of my killers come from that idea of, like you said, it's Machiavellian. I'm doing what I need to do to get to the next step, and this is how I'm going to do it. If I have to step over somebody, I step over somebody.
And it's really easy to make the case that for the last, up until the last century, people used to kill each other really all the time. I read a lot of Henry VIII books, and I got to tell you, he was a pretty competent killer. And a lot of people that you had your sword with you all the time. You had fights all the time. You had to be ready to kill people at a moment's notice for whatever reason you were killing them. And that was normal. We thought it was normal then. I can see how a murderer would go, look, you bothered me. I told him to stop.
And the thing is, in my series, because we have the spooks, which are their own little law facility, and
Right.
then we've got Ellie, and Ellie is a practicing psychologist. So she's trying to line up the fact that killing people is a part of these people's lives. And she knows that, and she works with murderers. But deciding where she falls in that is really tough because she clearly wants to be on the good side, quote unquote. And a lot of the books, depending on where the arc is at, it's about what is the good side, like you said. Because let's face it, if the winners are going to write the history
Winners
book.
write history.
So at the end of the day, it's if my government won, then I'm totally okay with what I did to you. But if we didn't, then, probably not so good. And a lot of the time, we define what happens by what happens afterwards and how we perceive that event. So if I've had murderers where they've killed someone, but because the person was not a great person, the person had abused them, the person had done this, it's almost like that murder is viewed in a very different way than, for an example, you killed an innocent, you killed a child, you killed a woman who was pregnant, you killed somebody, elderly person, you killed an innocent bystander. So there's also a hierarchy. To be fair, that's also true within the prison system. We have to keep certain kinds of murderers separate. We have to keep them safe because even within the prison system, there are certain crimes that we absolutely do not accept. And if the people on the floor know that this is what this person did, it's unlikely they're going to make it through the night. So we have to be aware of that as well.
That's an interesting thing. So there's a level of morality or civility, even I guess what you're saying is in every population.
It's funny, Nancy. I was there during a riot once. And what happened was in our murderer support group, we have a suggestion box. And so I had done my group and I went to the box and there was just a little note that said, don't come in tomorrow. And I went, okay. So I went and told my supervisor. I clearly did not go in, by the way. Yay, still alive. Go team. And that was their way of letting me know you're one of the good people. We want to keep you safe.
Mm-hmm. Or at least one of us does, which
At least somebody does.
that's all we need today to keep you safe.
And honestly, to be fair, I have found, and this is going to sound vaguely ridiculous, but there are times I feel much safer in a room full of murderers than I do in a room full of other people because at least I know the score with the murderers. I know what their patterns are. I know what the dynamics of the group are. I'm fairly sure, generally speaking, I know who's going to pop off and I know who's going to protect me. But if I go to somebody's grad party, I don't know. I get a little too much tequila and Uncle Frank, we might have a problem. So that makes me nervous.
I think that I had a friend who was she ended up skipping 2 grades. She was Korean and her mother ended up skipping her 2 grades in school. So she started, I think it was Yale at 16. And very first I want to say first day, might have been definitely first week. She went to a floor party at her dorm and she was raped. And that was the first day. And it was just like that guy, he was just, she was just completely innocent, had no idea what the hell was even going on. And, but that totally made sense to him. Like he was ready to prey on that population. And I think that's what's scary about going out in the real world is you don't know who you're sitting across from or who you're talking to, who your family's going to be exposed to at any given time. Which kind of actually brings me to one of the other questions I had for you. Do you feel like the stories that you write have a therapeutic value for people that read them or for people who haven't, because they are informed by real murders and actually by your experience, and even though you can say juicing up some of the things, the way people are thinking is actually pretty accurate in terms of what they think about exploiting people, what their version of morality is.
Yeah, it's actually, I have to be honest, it makes me a bit nervous because I had a nightmare the other night, paging Dr. Freud, where the murderer from Deception, Vaffy, was on the news. Someone did a crime just like him. And I was like, yep. And I just had to switch up one of the main plot points in the third book because it really looks like a serial killer that's active right now.
Really?
So remarkably concerned about that. It
I
is
don't
not,
want to make, I do not want him to read my book. And also I do not want anybody to use my book as a template.
yes, please do not. Hopefully, what they're seeing instead is, hey, these people are making bad choices. And it's not ever an okay decision. And to be honest, even when my good guys, quote unquote, have to kill people, that makes me very uncomfortable. And this is one of the reasons why one of my main protagonists, Gerard Renault, is he's going through like a religious thing. And he's questioning all of that. And he's questioning, yeah, I was raised to kill these people, but is that the right thing to do? And just because somebody told me I should do it, should I do it? Aren't there other ways to do this? And it's that's part of his arc is what does that feel like when somebody suddenly recognizes that's not okay? I work with a lot of soldiers who come back with PTSD. So
I was
great.
trying to figure out how to say that without getting either of us in trouble, but I actually hung out with a bunch of Marines and there were some of them were like white said, and it's just my own impression that there's three kinds of Marines. There's the white knight. There is the quarterback who plays for his team, and then there's the cold-blooded killer. And it's like,
Right. Then
and they're all
exactly.
they don't even they can't always even get along with each other
Well,
because
and
they have
not just that,
problems.
but if you take a healthy person and you raise them, also, Anthony, thank you for your service.
Yeah, thank you.
Everyone, vets, you guys are amazing. God bless always. And I try to treat as many as I can. And
Yes.
it's a bizarre world, right? Where we decide all of a sudden it's fine to do this. Like
Yes,
we've treated
exactly.
you your whole life and we're like, don't kill people, don't keep. Hey, you know what though? You can do it now though. And then when we're done, you come back and stop doing it. It's incredibly difficult. I do an anger management group for vets, and a lot of it is around that and around how do we deal with this? How do we deal with the fact that we had to completely shift our entire morality to make it okay, and now it's suddenly not? And I have these guilt feelings even though I have a medal. How does that feel for me? And it just really destroys people's psyches. We do a lot of working with that and rebuilding.
And I think it's especially because a lot of times people sign up when they're very young
Yes.
and they don't know what conditions they're going to find themselves in. They don't know which battlefield they're going to get deployed to. They don't know who's going to end up in the line of fire. They don't know how many people they're going to love who die. It's just very painful. And then we just make them come back and it's okay, that world's gone. And it's okay, I will never leave that world. I know that's reality. This other thing you people are doing is fiction. It's made up. This is the real world. And it's
Well,
like, yeah, it's a, and yet, like you say, we literally, one of the guys I worked with, a really great guy, nicest guy on earth, really. most honorable person ever. And he was a trainer at the big Marine camp, and like the one on the East Coast that everybody goes to, Camp Lejeune. And he said, we train them to kill. That's our job. And it says it takes work. That's why there is boot camp. It's because it takes work to make this happen. And they're never
And
the same afterwards.
well, yeah,
That's the point.
you break people down. And to be fair, it doesn't even have to be military service. I've seen relationships where people do this,
True.
where they break people down until there's nothing left, and they get them away from all of their resources and make it extremely easy to control all of their choices. And before you know it, this person will do anything for them. I work with people who have been in cults, and I've worked with people who we've dealt with brainwashing. I have somebody I'm working with now, and it's just yikes. And it's astonishing to me because we'll be talking and they'll tell me something that happened, and I'll say, that's not okay, right? And they'll go, wow. And they'll just start sobbing because they think, but it is, right? Is it, wait. And it's like their whole brain just smushes. And I'm like, yeah, it's
It's like
awful. That's what you were taught.
reality doesn't work. That's the thing. Reality is very much
Reality
a
is
matter of
defined.
impression.
Yeah, it's defined by the bearer. And I think, like you said, when you stare into the void lives with you now. Once you've been out there, I feel the same way, honestly, about the work that I do. It's like I've seen some really horrible stuff,
Mhm.
and I know that it lives there now. I can't be that person who pretends it's not real. I can sit and teach freshmen psychology, and I can say to them, like, cool, you guys are here for Psych 101. You're probably asleep. Let's be fair. And it's all silly to you. And to me, I'm thinking if you pay attention to this, you're going to be safe because the world is actually full of extremely dangerous people because I see them every single day. And
Right.
I'm glad that I do because hopefully I can keep them away from everybody else.
I used to tell people, catch him in the rye. The point is, he stops people from going over a cliff. He scoops them up. It says,
Mhm.
I'm just going to stop you from going over a cliff. And what's the best way to stop a killer from killing again? Make him not want to kill, or at
And
least make him not kill.
the thing is, generally speaking, it's really difficult for certain people not to engage their impulses.
Mhm.
And again, it's the same type of thing where it's like you've got to be able to put something else in there. If you can't, I can't sell you anything better. I have somebody, if you've read the books, Sunny
Yes.
talks about seeing the light leave people's eyes. And that is
Yes.
someone that actually said that to me. And he was so remarkably addicted to it. That's all he cares about is watching someone's life go. That's it. I can't sell him on anything else. Every time he goes to a probation hearing or parole hearing, sorry, I'm standing there saying, no, you can't let him out. And he knows it too. He's at the point now where he'll say, I know I will do it again. He
Right.
knows it. The other day he was like, yeah, there was a mouse that was near his cell. He immediately killed it. He needs it. And he needs it like the rest of us need air. And it's sad because they'll say to me, like, why am I broken like this? And I say to him, I don't know. I wish I knew. I wish I could fix it for you. And
Well,
I say,
it's like
maybe.
having
Mhm.
it's like hunger, right? Like people say, I have a friend who's in Overeaters Anonymous. He says the thing is alcohol. You can say I'm never going to drink again. I'm going to white knuckle it. You can't not eat. So you have to eat every day, and it's you need that. And if it's the only thing you ever get any pleasure out of, it's the only time you feel alive or human, or it's the only thing that has any meaning, then it's like you're saying I have to live my whole life like this, and I can't. I cannot live like this, which is again, I think that it's a this is we've gone for a long time without having the kind of wars you had in World War One, World War Two, Civil War, etc. And it used to let those people had their field day. We all stayed away from the battlefield, and then maybe it was different on the other side. But I think about that on a regular basis, the fact that it's like we ask people to do the impossible on a regular basis, and we just be normal. We just tell them, be normal.
Yeah, what is that? And it's funny because Renault has a lot of moments where, because he's used to being let off his chain and he's supposed to be somebody who's destroying everybody, he has a lot of times where it's very frustrating to him that when he does indulge that, he gets this high and he gets this like amazing feeling of finally living, and he can't have it. And he knows it's wrong. So it's like he's trying to fix it all the time and he's just not sure how to fix it because that's what he knows. That's how he got positive reinforcement, was he did these bad things. So that's like where that coupling is. And that's also why he has a lot of substance abuse issues, because that's the same kind of dopamine track
Oh,
that we're
no,
looking
absolutely. Not to mention the fact that I imagine there are people who go, I just want to have, look, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, they had frontal lobotomies.
at.
People that really could not get by in the world, they could have a frontal lobotomy if it was done better than otherwise. They could be part of society and maybe I just need to cut off the part that lets me act. And it's that's crazy, right? But I can totally see why people think that. It's what will it take to get rid of this? I can't rely on drugs. I can't, how do I know? I want my life back and I don't want to be this person anymore. How do I make that happen?
In my office, I have a little glass case that says in case of emergency break, and it has a magic wand. And
Hmm.
I always say to my patients, if I could have one power in the entire world, it would be to remove that for you and to make you feel better. That is the one thing that I want to do more than anything in the entire world. But like you said, it's not like that. It doesn't work like that. So a lot of the time, what I'll say to patients is, listen, we got to accept this as part of you. There is no sense in hating any part of you. It makes no sense, because that's
Right.
like trying to get up off the floor and being kicked in the stomach all the time. So I think that's part of it, is like reminding yourself, how do I learn to love that part of me that I hate? How do I learn to put it in a place that's better for me? This is one of the reasons I mentioned the surgeon earlier. That's why he's a surgeon, because he has a need to cut people up, but he can use that strength to help someone. So it's okay, how do we take this and make it a little bit better? Sometimes we really can't, but we do try. And I'm a big believer in, there's no place for us to be ashamed of ourselves. Whoever you are is who you are. So we have to find a space for that. And then we have to find a place for you to exist in the world, even if it's a world that isn't made up of people like you.
And or even if the part of the world you're going to get to live in is a prison, because that's safest for us and probably safest for you. So
Yeah.
the you mentioned cults. We hear a lot about cults, the brainwashing and stuff that they do, and how they seize people that might normally, maybe they have weaknesses or maybe they have vulnerabilities, but by the time they get done with the cult, they have nothing but trauma. And then seems like a significant amount of time, cults tend toward, seems like they start with ego death and then go to real death more often than you might like them to. It's all fun and games at the beginning, and then people start dying.
Right? Story of my life.
There's a difference between a game and a good time and people being dead and people being traumatized for the rest of their lives. Can you talk a little about how you work with, first of all, how do you get patients for people who are survivors of cults? Do they find you because you look for them, or is it the case that you connect to them through the penal system? Are they some of the murderers that you're treating, people who have been in cults, or?
Sometimes they are. It's when I first started working with them, it was accidental. So I was working with a trauma survivor, and the more we started putting the pieces together, the more I realized, like, whoa, you were part of a cult. And it was some really buried stuff. And psychology is kind of a weird field where we all know a guy, okay? And Ellie says that a lot in the book. She's like, I got a guy, and we all got a guy, to be fair. So if you come to me and you say that guy's an arsonist, guess what? I got a guy. So
Mhm.
I'm your dark psychology gal. So if you got somebody with severe trauma, if you've got cult people, if you've got somebody who, something absolutely horrific is happening, I'm your girl, because I'm willing to go in for that. So
Mhm.
I do get some people from the penal system. I do get calls sometimes from just police that I know who know me, sometimes lawyers that I know. So that's where I find them. And deception kind of deals with the
Right.
idea of how cults can be really not what we think they are.
Mhm.
They're, I think when you read Dissonance opens with this big cult, right? So
Mhm.
it's like we got the cloaks, we got the chanting, and it's basically, oh, just add some water, it's a cult. But then when you get to Deception, it's this is a cult, but it's very different. It's these are people who are making you feel good about yourself, very, but for money. And it's giving you social media status.
Mhm.
So I like the idea of how cults are really extremely good at finding people who have low self-esteem. And like I said about the dinner party, I can walk in a room and tell you who has it. I can be like, oh, that person's got I was at my friend's dinner party and she was like, what was wrong with I'm like, oh, she feels really bad about her outfit. Like she clearly has some issues with eating. She has an eating disorder. And she was just like, you don't even know her. I'm like, yeah, it was obvious. It's like if you know what you're looking for. And to be fair, someone who's a really good organizer for a cult or a recruiter is awesome at that. They know exactly where to go. They know where the kids hang out that aren't cool but want to be cool. They know how to do that. So they know where those kids are. They know how to get them. I'm sorry about your example with the poor girl who was raped, but like when I've had kids, all of the high school kids I work with, I warn them about this stuff. I'm like, listen, no one's going to be honest with you about this. So I'm going to tell you what's going on. And I'm going to tell you what the results of these behaviors are going to be and how difficult it can be. And I'm not saying it to scare you. I'm saying it so you're fully aware of what's going on. Because at the end of the day, what makes somebody manipulative is their ability to convince you that they're going to give you something good,
Mhm.
regardless of what you do. And they'll
Right.
make you feel like they can control you. And to be fair, we live in a very scary world with a lot of anxiety, and a lot of us secretly like being controlled. So it's easy to jump in that. You know what? Who doesn't like a compliment? The next time you're at the airport, if you're just being silly, you're like, I'm gonna have a fun time. All right. If you go to the airport, go near the airport bar, watch people. That is where most people pick up their victims, is usually at airport bars and places like that. Because at an airport bar, you're generally by yourself because of the way that TSA works now. So guess what? You're by yourself, especially if you're a female. You're looking for attention. They know what things to do. They know to buy you a drink. Before you know, you're a little tipsy. No one's going to notice if you miss that flight. There's a lot of easy ways to like make sure that you're being safe.
Wow, that's amazing. And also terrifying. So
It's a
good
pretty
thing,
scary world out there.
it's a
I
good thing you're
watch,
playing for the
yeah,
good guys, because
I watch a lot of Bob's Burgers. Just okay.
I watch Columbo because it's very I like it because he gets it
Yes,
every time. He's very easygoing about it.
love him.
And I watched through COVID, I watched every Murder She Wrote there was. And I only like the ones when she's in a weird little town, which is murder capital of the world.
I
So
love Angela Lansbury. Like, I love
so I guess before we take questions, so you have to spend a lot of time on your own mental health. And it's funny because I think the books clearly give you a way to some degree do that because you can tell people what you're seeing so in such a way that you're not terrifying them at parties. And you can also warn people. You can say this is how people actually think. And also you get a chance to be the murderer. It's so much easier to you go, I know how 50 ways to kill people and I want to get credit for that. I deserve credit. I've studied for this test. I can kill people in so many ways and get rid of the body. So important. But do you think that as you over the course of your life, you're exposing yourself to an incredible amount of trauma and viscerally or through the third in the third person, and when you're creating these books and you're pouring it into these books, you worry about them harming other people. There was a guy named so Stephen King wrote a book called Rage, which he took off the market because it was found in
Mm, yeah.
multiple kid murderers' hands. Like they would read the book and they go, "Yeah, that's me." And he said, "I was writing it about me at their age when I did want to kill somebody. I wanted to kill a teacher who'd hurt me." So so this whole experience, all of these experiences are very cathartic, and yet you're choosing to make your career in this instead of treating housewives that have agoraphobia. what drives you to that? Is it, you mentioned that you find it interesting, you mentioned that you want to be of service to people, but what makes you, you're not telling yourself, let's find something else to do that's safer.
I just think everyone deserves a shot. And when I was in school, it's you shouldn't get help just because you have the right insurance, and you shouldn't get help just because it looks good to help you. I don't think that's right. I was always taught that help is when no one's looking at you. Help is like what you do when no one is going to help, or no one's going to watch you do it. Like it's being done to do it. And I think that as a society, we can learn a lot. And we can learn a lot to treat a lot of these problems, which are really systemic. And we can do a lot to help people. It's not enough to just, what we give out like a free shopping bag every now and then. And oh, it's Thanksgiving. We suddenly remembered people are hungry. Oh, that's the only time that's happened this year.
Imagine our shop.
Hey,
How
yeah,
can
let's
this be?
no, man's inhumanity toward man is probably the most horrific thing in the world. So to me, it's not enough for us just to go out there and be kind to other people. It's let's be a force of good. Let's see what we can do to make things a little bit better. And hopefully we can help. I always think of my first professor who absolutely tried to talk me out of it. And the first interview I went with at the correctional facility, they denied me. They
Oh.
actually called me a Barbie doll. I thought that was fun. Okay. I was like, look at you with your little stereotypes. You're so cute. Who wants to get sued? Okay.
Now you have to give me the job.
I was like, how far do we want to push this one? But I also think that it's important that everyone deserves respect. And I can say that everybody that I treat, regardless of where they're coming from, they deserve respect and they deserve to be heard. And I have heard some really horrific cases. And there are times where I absolutely have to remind myself, like, this is a very dangerous person who cannot be allowed outside ever again. But that was somebody's kid. And at the end of the day, something went horribly wrong. But at least in this moment, I can sit there in their pain and they're not by themselves. So maybe that's helpful.
But I totally understand, and I admire the, yeah, I have the same feeling. It's like one of the reasons I do the stuff I do is I really feel like everybody has a right to know how to write a book. Everybody has a right to know how to make a movie. Everybody has a right to speak and be heard. And that's the part of the business that I like. I just like it. I want to make it, because so many people feel silenced and they feel like they have stories to tell. They tell me these stories because they say, I need to let people know that this happened to me, or I need to let them know about my family, and I need to know. And it's like they have messages that they want to put into bottles, and I just want to help them. And it's weird because it's such an external thing. You wouldn't think it would matter so much, but it does, though. That's the thing. It does. And I think you're lucky. I think people are lucky when they find something that they want to do. And I think you found a population, again, the people choosing not to kill and be identifying people that will kill again because they just cannot help themselves. That's a service to everybody, regardless of whether or not they are good people, whatever good is. Truth is, they're in the world, and that's where we are. So we do have a lot of questions. One of them, there's some interesting ones already. One is, will you be we will be producing a murder mystery franchise. Have any of your books been adapted for a movie?
I would love for that to happen.
So
I would be
they can
excited
reach
for
out to
that.
you if they can reach out to you at contact at
Yep,
tabithawinters.com, right?
absolutely. You can go through the website too. There's a contact button right there. Absolutely.
Right. Okay, now I have to give you a speech, but you'll be fine because you are who you are. But Hollywood is filled. And I don't like when people pick on narcissists. I have a thing about it. It's like they usually didn't choose to be narcissists. They are just
Excellent point.
we pick on them. We don't pick on people for being autistic. It's not like they chose to be that way. But you have to be, the cool thing about working in Hollywood is, and everyone who works here has huge and amazing stories. You will be fine. I spend a lot of my time teaching other folks about how to like get to know the different people in Hollywood and also understand the production process. Well, actually, the people who follow me, one of the things I'm really fortunate about is they tend to be people like us, I should say. So someone said, I worked in a mental hospital where a staff member went home one night and murdered his roommate, Manson style, and wrote their blood on the walls, doors, and mirrors. And their question is actually, have you written screenplays?
I have not. I might. I want you to know I feel you. I also worked, I had that happen as well, and
That's
I'm
too
sorry.
bad.
That's a
Jesus.
terrible feeling. Yeah, I'm really sorry. Yeah, a lot of secondary trauma in our field.
Yeah. And have you written screenplays?
I have not, I don't think my project in ninth grade counts.
Okay.
I would love to, so maybe I can
Actually,
figure
it's
that
like a
out.
short form. You might like it. The screenplays they're easier to write because they're shorter, and it's all
Yeah,
show don't tell. But it's a I hope you get the opportunity to. I think you'll enjoy it.
that'd be fun.
Robin, who has an incredibly interesting background, he says dissociation is not bad. Staring off into ether, it's when it becomes multiple personalities all in the same head. And he's written a book, and his second novel is centered around this. Actually, his background is very diverse, and he actually has written his history is incredibly diverse from the Second World War. He saw many of the most unpleasant sides of the Second World War, and he's incredibly successful. Works with the government to do a large quantity of research and other things. He knows wherever he speaks. Let's see. He asked an interesting question, which you don't have to answer if you don't want, or actually, Robin asks, does this affect your personal relationships negatively?
I think it absolutely can, and I think it's really important that we have very strong boundaries. I have I have a good group of people around me.
Mhm.
So it's weird. I set my schedule up such that if it's a really trauma heavy day, usually what I'll try to do is I'll try to make sure that when I get home, I have at least an hour to myself and I can either work out or break something or yell a lot or do whatever I need to do. And sometimes it's hard to get that feeling off. So you have to have ways to support yourself. I think honestly, working out is my thing. Like that helps a ton. Writing obviously helps, reading helps. But I think my dog is probably the best creature on the planet just because I can sit there and be like, you'll never guess what just happened. And she's not going to report me.
Mhm.
So I do think that it's really important. And I agree with you. I think we need ways to do that. I'm a big person where if my friends invite me somewhere, they know it's going to be based on where I'm at. So if I've just, because sometimes, guys, if I'm at the hospital and we have a code, I could be locked in for a while. I don't know when I'm getting out because as much as we're locking them in, I'm locked in too. So guess what? I'm here till I'm out. So a lot of the time I'll say to them, if I've been recently locked in, it doesn't sit well with me. It makes me very uncomfortable. So I will likely need to just lay low for a little while and watch Bob's Burgers, eat some chocolate, copious amounts, whatever, and just not do anything because it's very hard not to get in the mindset of, oh my God, I'm trapped too. And that can be very unsettling. I think it's important in this field that you're aware of what your fears are and what your phobias are and what sets you off. Because there are certain patients I absolutely do not work with because I know that I can't. And I think it's really good for us to know that about ourselves and to maintain those boundaries.
I would anticipate that you have a therapist that you work with on a regular basis as well, or one that has a background in trauma as well.
Yes. Yeah, we do a lot of that in our community just because there's so much vicarious trauma that will happen. We have a great, in our area, we have some great stuff where, for an example, if something really significant happens, there's a group of us that all get together. We help support the police. We help support all the first responders, the firefighters. We all come together because this is a community issue. It's not just one or two people. And we're not going to wait until somebody pops off to realize that they were affected. We're going to make sure that everybody's touching base. We're going to make sure everybody's okay. Are you eating? Are you sleeping? Like all of that normal stuff so that we make sure that we can go on and keep doing our work or we need to back off.
So is it So it's the case that you keep an eye on each other and because you could choose to hide the symptoms because you obviously have the skill set to, but by checking in with each other on a regular basis in the communities that you work in, it keeps you sane or it keeps you anchored despite the insanity.
I think so. And I think some of us are really good at our BS meter is pretty great. So we will call each other out and say, okay, I have friends who will absolutely be like, you're covering something, like what's going on? You're really upset. Like you're quiet, what's happening? And I have some really lovely people in my life who will very gently call it out and they know what my behaviors are. So we all pay attention to that. And we also take breaks because we can't just keep doing it. We have to have time where our brains can just be quiet, read some comic books, and move
Hang
on.
out with normal people that aren't necessarily trying to kill you every minute of the day. Um,
Hopefully.
is That's a really interesting insight, actually. So Chris mentions can you talked already previously about how murderers get made. He said he talked with a mafia assassin who told him that it was baby steps. First he watched others killing someone, then handed the killer, then they were handed a gun, etc. They would killed people standing next to friends, then killed all by himself. Is that something, are there people that train killers? The mafia is one thing, but
Oh, absolutely. There's a normalization to the behavior. I'll give you an example. I have somebody that was brought along on their first bank robbery when they were like 7. So anything that happens in your world has to happen just once before it becomes normal. It's okay, the first time that a family member goes to jail, that's shocking. When they go again, it doesn't matter as much. And I think that's a really good point that he's making. This idea that, yes, I've also worked with people who've been through that, and it's very gradual. It starts out with need, and then, sometimes there's also that the theft, rape, murder. It's okay, let's move up because what we're doing when we're trying to train a murderer is we're trying to see how far we can push them. Someone's got to drive the getaway car, right, guys? And then there's somebody who's got to take care of the bodies. So, in any kind of crime syndicate, everybody has their job. I've worked with people who are cleaners. I've worked with people who just drove the cars. I've also worked with people who are the people who work for the state who pick up the bodies.
wow.
So, everyone has their own level of what they're able to do. And if you're going to get good people on your side, you've got to make sure that they have the stomach for it and that they'll shut their mouth. Because if they won't be quiet, you're going to have to take them out too. So
Wow,
that becomes a bigger problem.
that's intense. So yeah, that's what I didn't like. I stopped watching The Sopranos because you just knew if they started to hang out with Tony, he's going to kill you sooner or later. Every single time. It's how I feel about Henry VIII. Well, you don't need to be close to that guy. There's nothing good. Sure, you
I
get
think
a castle or two, and the next thing you know, he's chopping your head off or doing some other fucked up thing to you. Pardon the expression.
that's
The He says, Chris mentions, have you read the book Kill Everything That Moves about mass murder in Vietnam and how that happened? And he shows that My Lai happened every day with normal American kids who just went nuts.
terrific. Yeah, that's an excellent book. That's one of the ones that I think is really important. Another book that's really good in the opposite side is called The Gift of Fear. It's about avoiding being a victim of crime. And I think if you take those on the two different levels, it shows you that really interesting spectrum of like where we go. And when I've worked with people who have been through Vietnam, holy cats. It's like you said, the normalcy of violence is so horrific. And I've worked with war survivors, and it's just, I think to myself, like, hey, I got up this morning and you know what? I went to break my egg in the pan and the yolk broke. And that made me vaguely upset. That was my day. I
Mhm.
could be in front of somebody who, what happened yesterday? Someone blew my brother's leg off. And that wasn't the worst thing that happened that day.
Yeah, that
You
was
know,
like
so
just
I
one of the things that happened.
so I do think I'm a very religious person, so I constantly think we've got to look at it from the perspective of where that person's coming from. And we don't know what their journey is. We have no idea where they're at. I've seen kids who've lost a toy that will weep in a way that makes my soul hurt. And then I've seen people who will come to me and say, I killed 7 people, and they don't bat an eye.
And it's
You
hard
know,
to know which is, that's the thing I always think about narcissists is it's like they live in a world of dolls. They don't have empathy. They cannot feel that vicarious thrill you feel when you see somebody win, somebody succeed, somebody try hard. You can't, you're living just trapped in your own head. Whereas, I don't know about you, but one of the things I like about engaging with people is the ability to put myself in their, to feel the empathy, to put myself in their position, to feel the sympathy, to feel the identification. How can you live in a world without that? It is like living in a world of corpses.
and a lot of it has to do with ego integrity. The ego is not well defined and it's not healthy. It can't deal with any negative inferences, and it can't allow anyone else to succeed or to move forward. If your ego is extremely weak, you can't give someone a compliment. You can't acknowledge that people have free will. It has to be about you because that's the only way it works. A narcissist, if we're looking at it in terms of ego integrity, is essentially a 2-year old. 2-year olds are the center of the universe. You can't pet a cat around a 2-year old without them freaking out and being like, pet me, love me. That's where they live. That's where all of their growth is. And that's the only way that they understand things. But now they're big people and we have to figure out how to navigate them. And their tantrums are not little kid
That's
tantrums.
so true. God damn. Narcissistic rage is really quite impressive.
Yes, it's terrifying.
And the smarter they are, the worse it is. Sarita asks, who's your publisher? And are you doing a series of, you're doing a series of books. Do you plan to do a series of books or are you going to do individual books as well? Like for
Right.
standalone books?
So right now I'm doing a series of books. I'm vaguely overambitious, so I've mapped out several.
Mhm.
Um, I'm self-published. I would love to find a publisher. That would be super cool.
You'll earn
Um,
lots.
but this has been okay. Like, it's been a fun time learning how to do all of this, and I appreciate the question. I want to give you guys something where these are people that are flawed, but you can spend time with them. And they help you to know you're not doing that bad today, girl. You've got people who care about you. And as flawed as these people are, they are loyal and they do have their own value system and they do care. That's why I read books. I like to do that. There's a term called loose left. And
Mhm.
it's that feeling of sadness when a book ends and you don't
Yes,
get to hang out with those people anymore.
yes.
So I don't want you guys to have that. I want to give you some more to play with.
I think that, and that's really very much the feeling I had. And I really like the way in which your therapist is, she's trying so hard
She really
to
is.
make it work. She's trying so hard to be of use to people, despite the fact that she has had all of this trauma. It's like she wants to make the world a better place. She tries very hard to stand up, 2 people and 4 people, and I really enjoyed the that dynamic in the character, and I also think that I really like books. I like psychological books, and I like them to be written by psychologists because I do think that they understand how people really work, not how they're supposed to work, how they actually work, which is completely different.
And I think I really like Ellie because I think sometimes I've noticed this myself. I'm speaking for myself here. I think sometimes people think psychologists or people in any kind of psychology have everything all put together. They think our lives are perfect and we feel great about ourselves and we make all the right choices all the time. And we don't, because guess what? We're people too. But our problem is we always know what the right answer is. So for us to mess up, we have to make a pretty big choice. And then that really sucks, you know?
Yes, it's like when the fireman gets burned. It just really is. It's very mentally challenging. It's like
Exactly.
I
I'm
like
like, I just make bad choices. I don't know. Like,
I really
sorry.
should, and I shouldn't be. Obviously, I shouldn't be advising others. I can't even live my own life this way, and yet nobody. That's which is interesting. I think it's harder for psychologists than maybe it is for doctors because doctors know they're going to get cancer. Doctors know that they're going to get diabetes. They know these things, even though no matter how good they take care of themselves. With psychologists, you don't even get you can't say that's going to be in 30 years, that's going to be in 60 years, it's no, right now, every day.
And not just that, but we know where all the weak points are.
Yeah.
So it's like we're constantly navigating a frozen lake,
Mhm.
and we know where the fissures are, and we're just praying to God today is not that day. And it's just a very scary thing because
Mhm.
I call it the awful truth. Because I work with therapy so much, sometimes I'll meet somebody and I know what the problem is right off the bat, but they don't.
Yes.
And it's not I can't tell them that right off the bat because it will be extremely traumatizing and they'll reject the
Oh
information.
no,
So
it doesn't count unless they say it. Otherwise, it's you saying it. You're saying your mother actually was the worst caricature of a mother ever. Really, truly awful. And it was really bad. And I think she did try to kill you a few times. But you can't say that because if you say that, you're saying something mean to them. But if you get them to talk about it long enough, eventually they go, I think she was trying to kill me. And you go, do you think so? And so you're like you see this on day 1 or day 2, and they don't see it for till year 2. Because
we're constantly guiding the toddler to walk. So
right.
we're constantly holding their hands and letting them take a few steps and watching them fall and picking them back up and encouraging them and saying, okay, we can do this, we can do this. And then eventually we're scooting. And
Hmm.
finally, one day the person looks at you and goes, oh, this is what happened. And we go, yes, there you go. It's a beautiful moment. Like
It
it's
is
so
a beautiful moment. I love stuff like that. Anyway, I very much look forward to your books. I've posted the information again. With your permission, I'm going to go ahead and make the video available to you in whole, so you can use it in whole or in part in any way that you like. And I'm also going to reach out to, I'm going to make it available to the folks that have signed up and to get access. If, and then I'll promote it on an ongoing basis. So hopefully it'll turn into more and more promotion for your work. And I look forward to seeing more of your books. Thank you very much for taking the time. And thank you very much for choosing to, in addition to all the work that you do, thank you for actually taking time to write these very interesting and entertaining quasi textbooks. Very,
I,
just real enough to make it worthwhile.
I appreciate it. And if I know there were a lot of questions that popped up, so if I didn't answer something completely, or if someone has another question, please feel free to reach out because I think the conversations are very helpful. And I really appreciate you giving me the opportunity to speak about this because I do think we're all in it together. So I feel like the more we can all help each other, the better it becomes.
I, it's an honor. Thank you very much for hanging out with me. Right. Good night, you guys. Thank you very
Bye.
much for hanging out. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.